I think we're here. Let me get all these buttons pressed. This is feeling pretty good. Oh, I have an echo. What have I done?
Hello.
Stuff. But now I think we are in good shape. I think we have a screen. I'm hearing something. What am I doing? I think we're
all right.
I think we're all right. Here. Well, I don't like that view. Let's do this. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. This is cool. And we have SpringOne coming up. And I have concerns. Not concerns. I wanted to get some focus and spend some time really just like get my things out the door. Get some first pass at things and go from there. That's it. That's all I wanted to do. I really don't have any other agenda. And look at this. Simon is here.
Hey, Simon.
Hey, this is great. And no, Josh is safe. Let me just say, yes, Josh is safe. He's had a long day, so he's tired. He's resting. But we're here. We're still here. This is gonna be fun. And yeah, let's go.
Got the keys and we're driving it around.
We got the keys, right? He said just bring it back, fill it up, and
fill it up.
We'll go. I was planning on doing this. I'm gonna share here. This is the focus. I wanted to go to like SpringOne. Right. Here's what we're doing. I want to do this. So SpringOne, it seems like it's a long ways away, but the CFP is due.
It's funny. It's like I was thinking, I've got time for the CFP. I've got time for the CFP. Oh my God, it's the end of April. That means May is like next week. Oh no.
So you can tell how good it's going to be when, like, I don't know if your Twitter feed is the same, but mine is like, hold on, like everybody's ready. My inputs are, we got to get these done. Like, are you ready? What are you doing? What are you submitting? And here we are.
Yeah, I keep seeing yours, and I was just reading Twitter. It's like, I should work on that now, but I have no idea what to do. So for those of you who are watching, it's like I literally just emailed Deshaun. It's like, help on the CFP for SpringOne, and he's like, I'm going live. So here I am.
So Simon, I'm going to ask you. I'm going to put you on the spot. I hope you're planning, or at least trying to get to SpringOne. What are some things that you want to hear about? What are some things that are interesting to you? You're thinking, hey, you know what? I'd really like to go and learn this. And while you come up with ideas, I know you have great ideas. I'm going to draw some things. What have I talked about in the past? Last year was Spring Boot Scale to 0. And that was like all about like the native images,
right?
Serverless stuff, and the benefits, like also project crack, coordinated restore at checkpoint, and that fast startup time. So the other piece I think that's new for this year, I think that might fall into this bucket, is the class data sharing.
Yes, CDS. Yeah.
So that's what I've talked about in the past. And I think that's it. How about you?
So I've been, so there's my favorite area, which is just organizing code for testing. So all the stuff around testing and you don't have to use Mockito as much as you think you need to. So things like that. And I think I do some things that either very few or nobody I see does in terms of testing, just so that you can have a lot more fast tests, that you're not running as many tests through the Spring framework, but you can still have good tests. So sort of optimizing your tests for Spring Boot is sort of another way to look at it. And then I've been playing with HTMX, and I just love it. And it's been so much fun. And I still feel like an amateur about it, but like I've got some really cool demos that basically because I needed it for so I have an ensemble time. I run these ensembles, and there's these 5-minute timers or 4-minute timers. And I was like, oh, am I going to have to write JavaScript for this? And then how do I sync up? Because everybody has a view of the timers so they can see how much time is left. And it's like, how am I going to do that? I guess I could do WebSocket from peer. And I just like, no, I'll just have the server know what time it is and push out the ticks basically to the browsers, and it works so well. And it makes it so much easier to test.
And that has to be WebSocket based, right?
It does. So this one was WebSocket based, but you don't have to use WebSockets for HTMX. But it made it like I wrote 4 lines of JavaScript. And the only reason I had 4 lines of JavaScript is because at the end of the timer, I wanted to play a noise.
Right on.
So I have it basically play a WAV file. So that I needed the 4 lines of JavaScript. But everything else up until that point, all the WebSocket stuff, 0 JavaScript other than the HTMX library.
Fantastic.
There's so much there.
So when it plays it, it's playing it on everybody's browser?
Yes. I can show it to you if you want.
Yes, I'm interested in that. Simon says, I hope to see a lot more about Spring AI, Spring CLI, and CDS. Fantastic. The Spring CLI, I'm not sure if I've really shown it much live, but Spring CLI has been a big part of my life the past month and a half. Like it's primary. He also wants to see some potential crack enhancements. That is absolutely. I haven't got an update lately, but I know what was kind of being worked on the roadmap for at least one implementation. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some sessions around Project Crack. And then he also says potential HTMX plans. Right on. So that's good. But you had a demo here. I'll pop yours up. Let's see what you're doing.
So this is the timer. And so I can basically resume the timer, and it resumes and it counts down. Every single tick is the server pushing out all of the HTML that's needed to change how much basically that text inside, and also the little gradient that counts down. And if I click on the pause, that change, again, all that HTML came from the server. The browser is doing nothing in terms of counting seconds. It's doing nothing in terms of adjusting, anything. It's basically, it gets HTML and throws it into this area. And all of these names, get populated. Each rotation, it reorders them. And again, all that is pushed from the server. And if there's 3 people connected, they all see the same thing. Their clocks are basically then 100% synced, because the server is the one that has that data.
The biggest delta is going to be network latency, right?
Right. So that's the only thing,
Yeah.
because I'm sending out 500 bytes every time.
Yep.
So it's like there's nothing there, and so it literally is whatever latency between. And this is up and running on Railway, and so whatever latency is there is there. But otherwise, the server knows the correct time, and so therefore, if you lose connection or you drop off, then
yeah,
that
makes sense.
So it's and I can test this, because what I can do is I can say, given this tick, right? So in a unit test, like given this tick, this is the HTML it should get, this exact HTML.
Yep.
And then I know when I put it on the browser, it's just going to work, because I already know what the HTML should look like.
That's slick.
So yeah.
You mentioned Railway. One of the things that I always end up talking about with you is like, hey, where do we do this? I'm working with a bunch of up and coming Java developers, and I know having a place to deploy your work, right? It's weird, this portfolio concept that you get from front end development. Spring developers need that too sometimes, and having an example of your work, like being able to show this and being able to talk about this in an interview would be really powerful. So
yeah, I actually have a couple of videos on the best and easiest way to deploy onto Railway, onto Koyeb, and onto Fly, because those are the ones that I've tried out. So I don't know if that's too narrow of a talk, but it's certainly stuff I've got going on.
Yeah, that's slick. I'm always just interested. I try to keep things small. I'm very interested in actually what I'm speaking about at Spring IO is Spring Boot on the Edge. And this is all about like, hey, Raspberry Pi.
Great.
Jetson, etc. Like where you're going to have these, workloads, AI even, but how it's now becoming more popular, prevalent in our customers, in our enterprises. If you look, I'm sure that with the amount of travel that you've done, you've seen Raspberry Pi displays and things in places that they weren't in a few years ago.
Right.
It's become wildly popular, and there's a lot of really interesting use cases. And this one kind of ties into the cheap places that you can deploy Spring, because like $15 Raspberry Pi to $85 Raspberry Pi can actually run a lot of Spring Boot workloads.
Yeah.
And if you're doing, I get into like the Kubernetes and serverless in that as well.
My mess just lost. Dang it.
I live in Missouri. Not a Cardinals fan so much since I have the Royals here, but I would have been rooting for the Mets. So,
all right.
So when you're planning your CFPs, what do you go for? The things that you're doing. I know that one approach, like my approach, is like, this is the stuff that I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'll turn off the game now that I'm not listening to it. That was a little bit on purpose, Simon. You can shut that off.
This is kind of like the things that I'm having conversations with customers. There you go. Love it. The things that I'm having conversations with and that I'm spending time on outside, that's what I'm submitting. Those are the kind of talks that I'm submitting to because I'm gonna.
You can switch back to your screen because you're still showing mine.
It's the easy. Oh, there we go.
There you
go. There's the Railway, Spring CLI stuff. These are things that I talk about with customers. I'm talking about regularly.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's usually the stuff that I've been playing around with and learning, or stuff that I've been teaching. Occasionally, it's I really want to do that, and I just haven't had a chance to get to it yet. To sort of force me to learn it. But I think I've got a lot of. So my next project is taking my TDD game and putting it online. So that's going to require mostly front end work, with at least stuff that I have to learn will be front end stuff. The back end is Spring Boot, of course, but the front end, when I worked on it a few years ago, it was Vue.js, because that was I felt like it had a nice, wasn't too complicated, and I could use TypeScript and things like that. But now I'm just going to use HTMX.
There you go. I'm a big Vaadin fan, and in my head, actually, let's do that. Like I said I have this this fun project. I do demos. Like I have a lot of conversations with customers. Oh, look at that. I mentioned Vaden and Lawrence. This is actually very
Guess who
relevant
appears?
to what I've been talking with you about. So here's the concept, and maybe this is our CFP submission. I've done these things in the past. Hold on one sec. I've done this thing in the past with my friend Robert Surchia where we called it dueling laptops. Basically, we're going to implement the same thing we implement in .NET and Java with Spring, and we just kind of like build out the same API. You start with an open API spec, and we would build it, and then we kind of like, just like a dueling pianos kind of thing, we kind of joke back and forth, and it was great, and I loved it, and I had a lot of fun doing it. And with Lawrence, I have this kind of like idea in my head, right, where I like Vaden, right? I can get a really pretty kind of design, really from without a lot of work. But let me tie these two together. I've got this little project catalog with a bunch of reference implementations. This is how you deploy to my Raspberry Pis, and it's backend stuff, right? It's like, hey, here's a Llama 2 chat where I build a backend, and in my head, I could have like a front end, like that's just like easy to make. Hey, it shows the in and the out, and just keep track of the chat. It's like not too hard to do. And this idea is in my head. It's been percolating. But for Lawrence and I thought it would be fun to do kind of dueling laptops. Hey, we're gonna build a chat bot, right? And I'm gonna build it the back end using Spring Boot, and I'm gonna go through all the steps from scratch. And Lawrence on the front end is gonna do the front end. You know, I'm going to start at start.spring.io. He'll start at start.vaden.com, and we'll meet in the middle, and we'll have a AI chatbot. That is
fun.
One, and that is like, I'm so that is just a coincidence that Lawrence is here. So I'm going to call that dueling laptops because that's what's in my head. I picture that same thing I did with Robert, with Spring AI. Vaden. Build. Yeah. Thing.
So let me ask you, what I mean, I've never been to the SpringOne conference. I think the one I was going to go to got canceled, or I forget why, but I haven't been to a Spring conference since 5.0 was Spring Framework 5.0 was new. So it's been a while.
Okay.
So this one is combined with the VMware conference, and I couldn't get a sense of like who's the audience for this conference.
That's a great question. Things have changed, and last year, so SpringOne used to be its kind of own conference. It was massive. It was my favorite. It was a thing, and I think last year was the first year that it was like a co-hosted event where we had like a day 0 of Spring content, top to bottom, tip to toe kind of thing. And then there was a few things that were like maybe a little bit past just developer in the IDE, but there's that continuity right between Spring and Tanzu. You know, there's that's kind of the best place to run your Spring workloads. And yeah, so there was Spring throughout the rest of the conference, and I think that the demand was just really high last year, is my guess, or the focus right on all the value that Spring delivers. So this year, I think it's still kind of heavy Spring content at the beginning of the conference, but the Spring one is like a track that goes through the whole conference. That's my understanding. So if you're a Spring developer and maybe you ride the ride on a software supply chain to some platform somewhere, it doesn't matter which. But a lot of times there's those relationships, those DevOps relationships between the platform team and the architects, like they want to be on the same page. So it makes sense that they're at the same conference. And yeah, so the audience really stretches from somebody that's delivering a front end for a mobile banking app all the way to somebody that's, backing that mobile banking app on a platform in 5 different regions or clouds. So yeah, and that's the other cool thing. VMware Explorer in 2022, there was like this, there was this really, really cool kind of magic that happened because it was VMware Explorer. It wasn't the code with SpringOne, but there was a lot of like the Spring audience was there for those reasons. Like they were there, we got to hang out, we got to have those conversations because they're using all the Tanzu things, and they were there. So it made sense, I think, to have those conferences together. And that's how I think it is. Again, that's way above my pay grade, but that's what it feels like.
Okay. Because that's always the thing I try to, like, having done presentations and having responded to CFPs and read all the guides, it's like always understand your audience. And like for me, sometimes that's really hard. If like it isn't written on the CFP, like here's the audience, and especially if it's changed over the years in terms of its structure and format and track layout and things like that.
Hold on one second.
It can get hard to figure that out. Hey there, Tukes. Nice to see you.
One of our good friends, another streamer on Twitch, JW Barry, is live, and he does Fortnite Friday. So my kids are like, please, can we do Fortnite Friday? But first things first. First things first. So that is a good question. And I think there was maybe some assumptions made, because one of the other things that came up is when you're submitting, and let me see if I can do this without, let's see if I can, I'm going to slide over here and I'll log in. But there's questions like, what do these things mean? Am I creating an account or do I have one?
That was confusing for me. It's like, I thought I had an account. Apparently I need another one.
Yeah, I might be able to just use my Connect account. So I'm going to try that. No. Returning user, if you have not set up your 2024 password, select forgot password. I'm going to try a different one. I'm going to try a work email. See if I have one of those. We're going to figure it out. I'm going to get logged in. And once I get logged in, okay, that didn't work. Let's see. I'm not a robot. Mike, what are these motorcycles? Let's try. Traffic lights. Okay, and I'm going to use my DeshawnC@vmware.com. Okay, so I should have an email. I'm going to try to log in because there's these different.
I'm looking at that topics. Now. It's like, am I a community member? I'm not a customer because I'm not paying you any money, but I do use Spring. So am I a customer? It's clear like the CFP here is like coming from like we're expecting you to be there's like our customers. Yeah, there's some assumptions which it's always interesting. Like who's thinking of what questions to ask.
So I did not get an email. I'm going to try this again. I just want to get in. I'm not a robot. Motorcycles again. I'm not a robot. Okay, submit. All right, please.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't looked at this before. The submission guidelines are a PDF. Because I was about to say, it's like there's 6 different session types. What are the different session types? Oh.
Yeah, that's the part. So I'm going to, maybe that's new because I don't think it was there. So here I'm doing my stuff, enter a password. I got to do this. I'm going to make a new one. I'm just getting some stuff figured out here. Copy, select, save.
So I got breakout sessions. So breakout sessions are 45 minutes.
There, that was where the confusion. Oh, it says the given email is already associated with an attendee, except they couldn't send me an email. So let's try that again.
Let's see. Oh, there's a tutorial possibility, which is 60 to 90 minutes.
Yeah.
That's probably so that's the category I go in.
The hands-on stuff. Oh, look at this icon. Yeah, I know. I what do they call it? I slid back. I had a backslide from my streaming. I know that I need to do it more. So here, I'm kind of joining forces with somebody on my team so that we can be a little bit more consistent by working together, and hopefully we can continue because now that we're in travel season, all right.
Oh yeah,
Sometimes Josh is in yeah, Belgium,
some part of the world.
and I'm here at my keyboard, and then there's going to be times where we flip. So we want to do that. So yeah, it says real devs don't tutorial. Right on. So yeah,
Well, I'm gonna tutorial if otherwise I don't know if I can fit. I guess I can fit my HTMX stuff in 45 minutes, but some of my other stuff is like 45 minutes. I'm just getting started.
yes. Bridge. It wasn't motorcycles, it was bridges. All right, I'm not a robot. Let's try this again. Let me get a password.
Oh heck, it's like sometimes those captures. It's like I don't know what this is.
All right, I have one.
You tell me.
All right, so I'm almost in. I'm almost in. Wait. All right. Oh, I have one. Here we go. I'm getting there. There we go. All right. Now I'm finally in. So I'm comfortable with this. So here's what it says. We're doing this CFP.
Yep.
And I'm going to read because that's what we're supposed to do. Please note submissions including named partner and or customer speakers will have priority in our review process. Okay. Your submission will be presented for review. Fantastic. You may edit your submission until CFP 5 p.m. Well, there at 5 p.m. I would have assumed that it was midnight. So
Yeah. Nope. Close the business.
So that's like, yeah, that's like even less time.
Yeah.
And that's like,
yeah. Don't wait till the last minute.
Yeah.
I did that for one. It's like, oh, it turns out time zones matter, and it was like 3 p.m. for me.
Time zones are always hard. But look at this. We're gonna get notified right away. So
yeah, that's nice. Quick.
We have 2 months, right, to get our stuff organized.
More than 2 months, almost 3 months.
Yeah.
It's a luxury.
Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, so that's good. So that's good to know. I am a Broadcom employee. My employee division. Danzu. Would you like help sourcing a customer? No. So this is how I'm going to help. If you're watching and you'd like to present something, what I always say is like, I would much rather like have a customer on stage. It's always better to have like the real world. Here's what we did. Here's how long it took. Here's the other things that were in play.
Right.
So if you're watching, if you see this and you would like to present, this is me asking if you're a customer, you're using Spring, you'd like to present, give me a call. So session type. So yeah, it says select an option to learn more. So this is where the first questions came.
Yep.
Somebody didn't understand what these meant. I still don't know what VMware code is.
So all those questions are answered in the PDF I found.
Where did you get the PDF?
Yeah, it's not obvious.
This thing, submission guidelines.
I like, oh, what's this?
Is that what it was?
That's what it was.
Okay.
Like, it's so strange.
Okay.
Like, why is that called out? Yeah, so if you scroll down, it has the track session types.
All right.
Yeah, right there.
This works. Icon, Tukes, Lawrence for sure. Simon, I would love it if you all would submit something. That'd be great. And I will review, if you want an extra set of eyeballs, I'd be happy to review. Because, yeah, it's going to be good. All right, so I get it. How do you present a panel discussion? That might be cool. It'd be like, hey, I want to bring JitterTed and Icon and Tukes on and talk about the value of live streaming for the Spring community. Uh, that's almost like, oh, it's one Broadcom moderator. So I can moderate it.
Yeah.
Oh, and up to 4 Broadcom or external speakers.
Or external speakers. Yeah.
So I think I want to do this. I think I want to just propose a panel discussion.
Building the community through live streaming.
Right. I want to propose, like maybe just like building community.
Yeah.
In general.
Yeah.
Live streaming, drugs. What was the other one I was saying? Yeah, conferences. We did a spring office hours just talking about like conferences and like how to submit. And I thought it was a really good session. It was somebody that, wanted to tell a conference about how Spring IO really changed their career, changed what they were doing. It was a big deal. But the things that were said, the idea of how you learn something. Sometimes the best way to learn something is to say, hey, I'm going to speak about it. I'm going to learn it so that I can speak about it. And that's how you drive yourself to learn. I know that the things that I teach and I present, those are the things that I'm the strongest at because I've taught it and presented it and I've gotten feedback on it. So these are my like candidates, things that I want to get just those kind of like ideas, right? I think tonight, this is another thing. This is not dueling laptops. This is not dueling laptops. Better together. And we'll open up a Google Doc, and Lawrence and I will work on that. But see, like Lawrence gets it. Something around those lines. But I'm going to present a panel discussion. And if nothing else, it's an opportunity for me to get my friends, my colleagues, the people that I value their opinion. Yeah, panel. Yeah, like wouldn't that be fun? Like, so that's one of the options that we have here is we can submit a panel discussion. I always felt like the panel discussions were something that conference said, like, we've had some proposals on this, so let's just talk about it. Right? None of them really like made sense I just assumed that that's what it was. So now let's just test it out. Right? Let's test it out. Yeah. So here we go. The others are like meet the expert roundtable, up to 2 Broadcom, or this is another cool thing. So these I've been a part of. I've been there, like just right. Like I could have you and Wim and Thomas do an expert roundtable on HTMX. Like, why don't we submit that?
Yeah.
I want to like have these things. Right. This is, I think, valuable, right? HTMX. Right, that would be cool. So I know Thomas has already submitted, right? I know that he's already got at least one of his CFPs in, I think. So, right, if I got folks that are there, or hopefully they'll be there, why wouldn't I do that? That would be fun. I want to just keep on going. I want to keep on understanding the tutorial deep dive. That makes sense to me.
Do you want to zoom in a bit on that PDF?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, tutorial up to 4 Broadcom or external speakers. Well, fantastic. I like for like those workshop tutorial hands-on deals. I'm a big fan of. I actually like being the person that's not presenting. Last year at SpringOne in Singapore, Ryan Baxter, super brilliant. He's giving a presentation, and I was just kind of like the walk around and help, like color commentary. Like as I have a hard time like typing and talking at the same time because I gotta make sure I spell everything right. But like as he's doing that, and I fill in. But it was just a really good blend, right? The pace of it, the flow, and when anybody had a question, he didn't have to change his track. I could go and I could help. I could sit side by side. We had a full room, and it was a blast. I like that approach, especially on something that's hands-on deep dive. I like so that we don't have to like stop the flow. Having somebody in to go and help is awesome. Yeah. And when I did that with like Dan, we kind of like split off sections, like, hey, you're going to do this first, and then I'll go. And then, yeah, while one person's presenting, we have somebody else that's kind of making sure everybody's caught up with all the content and not leaving any questions. I like that approach. Data center automation sessions from the community that focus on sharing automation code samples, techniques, or technical topics. Topics can focus on PowerShell, Kubernetes, ARIA automation, other automation DevOps tools. Code examples are encouraged to bring your laptop and share how you wrote the code.
It's so interesting that PowerShell is called out.
In the VMware ecosystem, PowerShell is it's there a lot. And really, I feel like there's a handful of people that early on that's what they had. That was what was in their tool belt. And you take that example and you copy and it finds its way. And then people optimize and they feed it back. And I think that's what happened. That was a tool that they had. They didn't have to install anything else. But I'll be honest, a lot of those one-off like PowerShell, Bash things that I had built, I'm now converting them to Spring Shell.
Cool.
I love Spring Shell, and if I were to do one of those, right, VMware code session, that's what it would be on. I don't know if I'd do a VMware code session on it, but actually, let me talk through this. There was this project called Spring Cloud Pipelines that, in my head, I still love the pattern. Basically, what Spring Cloud Pipelines said, it's not being supported anymore, but the documentation was made by Marcin and Cora. It's great, but it's like an opinionated pipeline. So hear me out. This might be a VMware
come
code
from
session.
Concourse?
No.
Okay.
No, separate from Concourse. It evolved separately. I believe the story is this is what Marcin did before he was on the Spring team. He kind of had this opinionated way of getting to production. So I'm going to tell a short story of like what I think. Come on, give me a button on there. Oh, I think it can't be that one. I think I have to do this one. All right, this is opinionated. Did you say Allah, Spring Cloud Pipelines? The idea is, if you give me a repository, this is how easy it has been and how easy it should be, in my opinion. Like step one is like give credentials. To production. Like that's wordy, but like step one is like, give me a token to your GitHub where I can just read, so that I can go and I can build things in your repo. That's enough. So if you want to ride my path to production, you give me credentials. And my production is Raspberry Pis, so there's some constraints that have to be in there, some guardrails, but that's implied. And if you just give me credentials, then my step is I'll go and do this. I will go and I'll crawl. First of all, this is what I did. I'll crawl your GitHub org repos. So you give me credentials to whatever you want to ride the ride. You don't have to add anything. All you do is give me credentials, and I'll go crawl it, and I'll set up pipelines for everything that I can. So today, my ride, it's going to have pom.xml, and that's it. That's your requirement. Oh, no. And it's got to be Spring Boot parent pom. So if you check these boxes, what my ride will do, it's going to use build packs, but I'm going to go crawl your repo. Any of the repos that I have access to, I'm going to generate pipelines. This is the kind of guidelines, right? This is the minimum bar of entry. But now you can imagine, you're familiar with Spring Cloud or Concourse. You can imagine how cool it is, where the opinion is like, do your unit test. and then do your integration test. And then maybe you're like, build your artifacts, do your scanning. Maybe you have a stage or whatever, dev, integration test. Maybe you have a dev stage, whatever your thing is, right? And then you get to prod. So this idea where Dan shows up and Dan says, hey, I've got a repo that I'd like to ride on your ride on your Raspberry Pis. Dan, I'm happy that you're here. So he says, hey, here's a token, shares it secretly via some API. And then boom, there's a set of pipelines that are just run. And it's on Concourse, for example. And then you can go and you can see it. You can see the status and you have the outputs. Your artifacts go to your registry, right, and everything's just up and running. And that's all that you do. That idea, that's what Spring Cloud Pipelines did. And I'm a big fan of this. And Spring Cloud Pipelines was kind of built on Bash and it had a bunch of things.
Okay.
But I was working on this earlier today. This idea of all those things that it was building, because I now have Spring Shell and I can have that as like a native CLI. I can connect to all of those APIs, whether it's Concourse or Kubernetes or whatever, and I can build this idea and just have it land wherever I need to. So that's exciting to me. That opinion is exciting.
I love opinionated stuff like that, because then it's if your opinion happens to match, then it's so easy. It's just out of the box.
Even if it doesn't. So this is another thing, like as you do these kind of things, again, all the way back to Heroku, this idea that, hey, you've built something, I want to push. I want to Heroku get push or whatever it was with Heroku, but you just want that. Hello, here's my stuff. Like, just go run it for me and land it on Railway or Koyab or Fly or whatever. I could do the exact same thing. Where it lands really doesn't matter. Right? Where it lands doesn't matter. I can do all of the other things, do the integration test, the build artifacts, and then this is the CI part, right? There was an opinion here of having it automatically deploy, and that's one of the opinions that I've changed. Like, it's okay, build the artifacts that are ready to go to production, but I want a different trigger for how it goes to production. So my opinion, I think I've shown you this, is in GitHub Java Grunt. In there, I want to give the developer, if I'm the platform owner that's building these pipelines and taking things to production, I want to give you a way of rolling things back. So, hey, here, I'm going to build all the things, but in your GitHub repository, let's say it's Flux, you can decide which version you want to take to production. So as long as that token that you gave me has access to read your Flux repository, and it's going to be looking for Flux, that's part of my path to production. It's going to look for a Flux repository, and the things that are in there, that it can deploy, that has access to, it'll deploy. And this is Flux is a GitOps CI/CD. So if you change one of those values, then the GitOps changes. So you can do your rollback and you have control.
Right.
You don't have to fire off a pipeline. So this is my opinion, and this is where Spring Shell for me meets Spring Cloud Pipelines. It's a lot of work. Yeah. But if I start small.
Yeah, start with the simplest case.
Yeah. So
that's the other great thing about opinionated is like, your opinion is like, everything must be structured this way to make it easier to build that first one.
That path where you say, hey, you know what? Maybe my opinions don't match. Again, experience that we had, or that I had working with orgs, was maybe this team that wanted to ride that same ride to production, maybe they had a different scanning tool that they want to add on.
Right.
We just added hooks.
Right.
And I listened to Josh Long talk with Phil Webb and Dr. Dave Sire just earlier today, and they were talking about Spring and how Spring has evolved. And when you're a system as large as Spring Framework, and you have all of this millions of developers that are like, hey, I have a PR to do this. I think it was Phil that was like, yeah, sometimes I don't want to maintain that. I don't want that. Yes. But what if I give you a hook?
Right.
to do that same thing.
Yep.
And that's how, like, I think that's how this Spring ecosystem has played nicely together. It's like you don't have to have all the things that everybody needs,
right?
But you can give these hooks to allow it. And I think that same concept, and I've seen it work, where your path to production, your pipelines, the tests that you're running, and what that pipeline steps might look like is going to be 90% similar to everybody else.
Exactly.
Right. So why duplicate it? This is one of those strong opinions I have, like, in the org. I'm a big believer in a centralized CI process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the CD, whatever prod is, and it's weird, but I've always said, like, hey, it could be mainframe. Now it's weird because Broadcom has mainframe, but I'd worked with customers back in 2018, 2019, where they were taking their applications to mainframe. They still had Cloud Foundry, right? They still had Cloud Foundry. But then once you see the value of going to Cloud Foundry and having kind of that centralized path of production, you want that for your other workloads. And they're like, yeah, but this thing doesn't fit on Cloud Foundry. Okay, do all the other steps the exact same, and then just send it to your mainframe.
Right.
Or send it to your VMs or whatever it is. That's okay. So yeah, those are my strong opinions, and it works. So yeah, this isn't flushed out yet, but that's where I think about Spring Shell.
Yeah, that's a great use for it. Yeah.
Ted, Lawrence, favorite people, right? Like we're doing stuff, Dan, and I don't know what, it must just be in the air. Everybody's working on their CFPs. So what we're just doing is talking about stuff, right? It says, I love Spring Boot because it doesn't make me do it a certain way. I have flexibility. Absolutely. So the other part, that Spring CLI, I like the Spring CLI because of this. I can do, like, just like I do with my Spring initializer, start.spring.io. I've got these examples that I can, like, build and I can show. But instead of doing start.spring.io, I say Spring Boot new. And I build from one of these. But then also, I've been talking a lot about Spring Modulith lately.
Yes.
And
yeah, I'm going to be building. So I mentioned my TDD, my online version of my TDD game, and I'm going to be restructuring that to fit with Spring Modulith. So that'll be, finally, I'll have an app that will actually not just be modular, but be Modulith. So that'll be fun.
Like, this is, you can have your opinions. Honestly, I think it was you that I first learned about ArchUnit from at KCDC in 2022, maybe.
I wasn't at 2022. I was at 2023.
Maybe it was 2023 then.
I talk about it. I talk about a lot of my stream as well because I use it a lot for stuff.
Right.
Yeah, I love.
You presented ArchUnit at KCDC 1 year, right?
No, I didn't. That wasn't.
No.
Me. I wish it was, but it wasn't.
Oh, I know who it was. It was I could see his face. Now I can't remember his name, but yes. But yeah, ArchUnit. And maybe I'm putting you in that bucket because you do speak about it. But this idea that I can have this architecture guardrails in place is awesome. So
yeah, I've actually been doing quite a bit with like, there's the general, organizing code and making sure layers don't talk to certain layers in certain orders. But there's some detail stuff that's really, that you can't use Java's visibility for, because, like, for example, I want my repository to be able to recreate my domain object. In general, though, that's for certain architectures, that dependency, no, you can't do that. Or you can, but you want to have, unlike C++, there's no friends kind of idea. Say, this guy can call this method on this other guy, but nobody else can. And so there's no way to do that in just, out of the box Java. But you can write an ArchUnit rule that does exactly that.
Yep.
And so I wrote one to do exactly that, because like nobody should call this constructor. This is a special constructor. Nobody should call it but the repository.
Yep.
Um, and
That.
that kind of stuff is really nice, because you want to make sure that, well, there's a reason why, because it's like you can stuff in whatever your data you want without it being validated, because it assumes it's coming from the database and therefore it assumes it's correct. But coming from any place else, you want it to go through the normal validation. And so you can name your factory method constructors to do that, but to have a rule that says don't do that is way better.
Absolutely. So the thing that I luckily I ran into somebody today. I had a conversation with a customer today where like Spring Monolith, I think, was the idea is let's put some guardrails in place so that we don't make mistakes. Like
Yes.
we know what happens as you start gluing on features onto a monolith. We know what happens and how things get crossed. Oh, let me just inject that bean over here. We know what happens.
Right.
The things here that Spring Modulith does that I like out of the box is I can get some verification of that, Arch unit or other rules. But also I get UML. I learned recently that in EMEA, UML is heavily used, widely used. So when you start talking about a project, they immediately kind of go into that UML diagram approach of describing their systems.
Right.
But it was, I believe, it comes from a bunch of years of work in space, right, and a ton of research. But it's great. It's a great way to start, and it's an amazing way to start. But I've been talking with customers, and they ask questions like, hey, but can it help me? Can it help me? Like that's, I present Spring Modulith, and that's immediately, every time I do it, can it help me with my Modulith?
Yep.
And the answer is yes, right? Just because it can generate kind of the UML, and when you see the lines are going both ways, or the dependency lines are in a circle, then you can like see, hey, well, that makes sense. That's why we couldn't pull that out. That's why we couldn't, fix things. But there's another interesting use case that's, hold on one sec. They want the Fortnite Friday. This other use case, when I think about the pendulum swings, right? From data center to cloud. I've also, those same companies are now doing cloud to data center.
That's right.
The repatriating, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's cheaper.
Right? Because especially depending on how you're doing things, it can matter. But we've seen these kind of like pendulum swings. The other one I'm going to say is like the monolith.
Yes.
To microservice.
Yeah. I'm glad to see that pendulum swinging back towards monolith.
And this thing, this is what I'm in my head having these conversations, and it resonates. And today a customer brought it up to me without, I just said Spring Modulith, and the customer said, but what about this? And they talked about this very same concept that I've been noodling on. I've had a few conversations of it, or with it, right? Where I've done this in the past, right? I have these microservices, and I had to go to the cloud because we needed the agility. We needed to be able to deploy fast, and we couldn't have the data center ticket system, in our way. So we had to go to the cloud so we could go fast, because we needed to do it in multiple regions as well. So hey, here's what we did. And now they have this microservice architecture, and they started in 2018, pre-COVID, and then in 2022, these are just numbers. This is just a fake example. 2022, it's feature complete. Right? They're keeping the lights on, and it's still valuable. Still profitable. But they have a bunch of repositories, workloads that they're trying to maintain, right? They're not adding features, but now they just, whatever the number is, N, right? They are having to do the care and feeding. And we know it's hard enough, right? This is another topic I spend a lot of time on is I don't want to be on any old version. I want to be N-0. That is my goal. That's the ride that I'm riding. And it's hard to do, right? The more repositories, the more of these moving pieces that I have, the more risk, the more work, the more infrastructure, just the pipelines, right? We talked about pipelines. The more pipelines I have to do to take that to production. And if you start this way, right? If you're starting like, hey, it's not even public yet. If I've got a bunch of these microservices that are going out the gate, I'm putting more work on somebody else. The SREs, the DevOps roles, the people that are making those pipelines and building those images. And I'm putting more images into my registries, all the other things. I'm making it more difficult if I start, but also like once I got to the feature complete, just the maintenance of that.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the other thing I say, right? Right. The right choice changes over time. So
yeah, architecture needs to be evolutionary, and it needs to change depending on what the fitness of, this is what, those folks say. It's like, it's not a static thing. It doesn't, when you're adding features quickly, like you were saying, and then all of a sudden you're still adding features, but nowhere near, you've sort of flattened out the curve, and now you're adding a little bit. It might seem really slow now to start adding features because you got, those end things that you have to deal with. And now you might want to consolidate.
So the other capability that Spring gives me with Spring Modulith is I have a path and I've got some tools where I could start to pull these things into a modular monolith. And I'm trying to like show this practice. So imagine a talk where I have a bunch of services, microservices that look like these, right? I got some AI, I got a GraphQL that I stole from Dan Vega. I got a Hello World. I got a simple JPA, but I got some stuff. I got a Spring Shell example. I got some workloads here that are, imagine they are out and running. And then imagine that I were able to just pull all of those in because they follow the Spring Modulith guidelines, those guardrails. If they've all got the package info and they've all got those rules in place, I can start to pull those in to a modular monolith, and I could run my tests, right, against the distributed system, and then I could run it against my same modular monolith. But I have one artifact. I have one repository now going forward, while I'm keeping the lights on. I could have one in each region or 3 in each region. It's still going to be far less complex. When I do decide to add a feature, I know where to go.
And you can refactor it without having to go to 10 different repos.
This is what's in my head. And I was very, very happy when a customer today said, yeah, the same thing, right? They've got these things that are in place and they're like, oh, they went too far, right? They've got a microservice for each domain object. Right. So we've seen that. Like, I've made that mistake. I've overdone it many, many times. But this is nice, is that we kind of have this thing.
It gives you that tool, that structure as a tool. So structure as a tool, I think is really so valuable, because then it can, especially as you're learning, it's like, did I cross a boundary that I shouldn't have? I didn't think I did, but it's telling me I did. And it's like, let me look into it. It's like, oh, I did misunderstood that. Now I understand that this should be over here and this should be over here. And that can make learning that stuff so much easier.
I have been listening to the DevOps playlist on YouTube. So like, I think I've told you the story. years ago, I was watching, like, I was so in love, and Spring was doing so many good things for me. Spring Boot all the way. I was Cloud Foundry all the way. I was Cloud. This is what I was going to do, and I'm in. So I was studying, and I was just watching these videos on repeat. I had my little playlist, like, oh, it was this, and sometimes it was even the same talk. Like it was Rob Winch doing the Spring Security 5 talk, but it was 3 times because they were slightly different. I didn't want to miss anything. I wanted to make sure I got it, but I would just kind of leave it playing in the background as I was a developer and trying to build things and make my company money. And and then I kind of moved forward, and now Dan, hi Dan. Dan's got a bunch of great content. I listen to Dan. I listen to Josh. I listen to you. Like your streams, I usually have like going on at the same time. I like have those in the background, but I've got these like playlists that I've been listening to. It's passive learning, but it seems to help. But lately, I've been doing the DevOps stuff, and I've been listening, and several of these talks from years ago, without saying it explicitly, they're talking about, like how you can use Java and its visibility to organize your code and prevent bad practice. Venkat, right? Like one of his sessions. I was like, oh, yeah, that makes some amazing sense. That's all been codified for you in Spring Modular. Okay, cool. Then there's another Ian he was talking about the different architectures, the layered and the hexagonal and all the things, the event driven. And even the things that he was saying, I was like, yeah, again, it was, it's a talk from a year or 2 ago, or maybe that was a recent one. I don't know. But again, several of these DevOps talks that I've been listening to kind of lean into some of these things and some of the decisions that we have to make today as a developer. We just we make decisions, for whatever reason. And it's nice to revisit those decisions. And if you've been around long enough, you're going to get the chance to revisit things like your architecture.
Yes. Yeah, and the these tools then make it somewhat easier to reverse some of those decisions, or maybe reverse has a connotation that you got it wrong in the first place, but more like you can switch to this other thing, because now, like you were saying before, now it's not as good a fit for the current state of the organization of the product.
Yeah. So this is these are interesting things. I don't know if there's a talk there or how I would kind of get that point across. But for this, there's a demo. I don't know if it's an hour long, but there's
definitely a demo walkthrough of like, this is, we took 8 different microservices and pulled 7 of them into a modular monolith, because we needed to leave the 8th one out because it had scalability that whatever.
Yes.
That would be really interesting to see.
So the other cool thing I think that you'll appreciate is Spring Modulith. It kind of leans into the event-driven architecture, right? Because if I've got user service and account service and order service, a lot of times we were building clients, right, and just adding more work. And if I start with an event-driven architecture, not necessarily here, like let's put this all into that module. If I start with event-driven, Spring gives us our events. I can use the application context, and I can do events. It puts a little wrapper around it. It says these are the module events.
Yes.
That we can talk to back and forth. And then to go from using that application context for eventing to like an externalized, I want to pull one of those guys off.
Right.
All I have to do is add externalized to those events. And once I've done that, I have hooks for Rabbit, JMS, and Kafka today. So I add a starter, I add externalized, and boom, my application works. I can go back and forth between these architectures. And this is good.
That'd be cool to see.
This is good. Well, I'm gonna try to do this on Tuesday here locally at the DevOps Days KC. I want to talk about like why are you starting here?
Yeah.
Streamline your path to MVP. Don't start with this in mind. And I know when you've got Spring Boot, everything looks like a microservice, right? It kind of
not to
makes it
me.
easy. Oh, well, for me, I've been there, right? I started to think about all the other. Oh, I'll plug it in. It's going to be so easy. But I'm saying you can still have all the benefits of Spring Boot and the production ready enterprise grade things, and put it into a modular monolith and just save everybody a bunch of headache.
Yeah.
If you lean into the things that you get out of the box with Spring Monolith.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm going to try to present that on Tuesday.
Cool.
So not necessarily for the developer audience, but for like this getting to MVP with this is a whole lot easier than this.
Yep.
Just done. I don't care how many years of DevOps you've got, how many years of infrastructure, cloud native you've got. This is easier than this. Always. Let's get to MVP before we start doing these things and planning for our multi-million-dollar exit. Let's get our MVP done first.
100%.
So we have change. So what are some other things? I think
I'm gonna have to drop off because I haven't had dinner yet, so I'm gonna go have dinner.
Yeah, go get dinner.
But
it's
thanks
getting
for
late. My kids want to do the thing.
Yeah, your kids want to get
but I'm gonna do this before I leave. I understand you got to go to dinner. Before I leave, I want to make sure that anybody that's here that's got questions, I'm gonna just do a little bit of time for Q&A.
Well, I'm gonna write up my stuff this weekend, and I'm gonna throw it your way and get some feedback.
Absolutely.
For the CFPs. So
I will
stay tuned for that.
The kids have games and stuff tomorrow, but I'm planning on streaming, and I think Josh is going to be joining me tomorrow. Cool. So yeah, and hopefully we'll all get our CFPs in. We have thousands of minutes still. It's less than 9,000. Thousands of minutes still to get our CFPs in. So thanks for joining me.
Thanks for
this wonderful and good conversations. I'm looking forward to seeing your CFP. But right now, like you can take care.
I'll see you.
Enjoy your dinner, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yep.
And then for everybody else, thanks.
Bye, everybody else. See you.
I'm going to open it up, and if there's nothing, that's cool. But like I like to say, when you come to my house for dinner, if you leave hungry, that's your fault. I'm here. If you've got things that are on your mind, you're going to spend some time. Maybe you're standing up your Raspberry Pis this weekend. You've got questions. Ask them right now. Ask them while we're here. Yeah. Don't leave hungry, right? Don't leave hungry. So if you got questions, again, I can wrap up. My kids are ready to play Fortnite with JW Barry. And yeah. If you got questions, give it a whirl. These are the things, this is a valuable session for me. I think I've got some good content here. The main thing is I want to get these CFPs submitted. I think I can edit them later, but I want to get these kind of on paper. I think maybe I want to do the Spring CLI piece is the other one. But if you, what are you working on? If you've got something cool that you're working on, why aren't you submitting? If you're doing Spring, especially, I'll say that I will happily help you. I'll review your abstracts. I'll give you my tips. I'm not an expert, but I'll help you as much as I can. I know one of the limiting things on this CFP is there was like an 850 character limit. So I'm not a great wordsmith, but I know that it's tough for me in my abstracts to get it in a small enough. Yeah, this is gonna be a challenge. So that's my plan. I'll be working on this weekend. But if there's no questions, that's okay. That's okay. I'll say thank you for hanging out, and yeah, stay tuned. Look for us again. I'll be I'm on a new channel, and tomorrow hopefully I'll have my buddy Josh, and we'll do something. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll wrap it up. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.